Hello everyone and welcome to this Q&A video where I answer all your questions about anxiety and panic disorders. Today we will talk about exposure therapy, about obsessive thoughts, about nutrients, so let's get into it. The first question is, why isn't my agoraphobia improving even though I keep exposing myself, and what am I doing wrong? Alright, so first of all, it's great that you're doing exposures, but there are a few things that can get in the way of them really being effective. So for me personally, I did exposure therapy for more than 6 years and it didn't do anything for me. And it's all because I just wasn't in the right state of doing exposures effectively. So what I found is that we need a few things before they really work. And the first one is a good understanding of what anxiety is and how it affects you. The way that your brain works is that it needs to be able to clearly define a problem before it can work on a solution. Because there's nothing more stressful than not knowing what's happening to you. Next, we have to make sure that the anxiety isn't caused by some underlying issue. I've worked with people in the past who struggled with anxiety literally for years, only to find out that it was simply caused by something like a caffeine intolerance, for example. If you get panic attacks because you drink coffee every morning, then you can do as many exposures as you want, but it's just not going to work. And the same goes for other things like nutrient deficiencies, inflammation, or even something as simple as just not being hydrated enough. We need to make sure that these kinds of things are not messing with your brain's stress system. And after we've done that, we need to put your mind and your body in a better state. And we do this with tools that are meant to regulate your nervous system. This completely depends on your personal situation, but generally we use two different categories of tools. The first one is tools to prevent anxiety, and the other one is tools to relieve anxiety. Once we help you to find the tools that really work for you, your anxiety will become way less intense, and in some cases, including for myself, it can even completely prevent panic attacks. On top of that, because your nervous system is now better regulated, you've become more resilient to stress, and you're not full of stress hormone anymore all day long, it becomes way easier to actually face the anxiety. So this creates the perfect foundation to start doing exposure therapy. There's literally no faster way to overcome anxiety than by doing exposures while you're in this optimal state. And if the exposures at this point still don't seem to work, then in most cases it has to do that, maybe without even realizing, you're still using safety behaviors while doing the exposure therapy. And this sends a message to your brain because you're basically telling it that the only way for you to be safe is when you do those behaviors. For example, using your phone for distraction or sitting close to an exit just to make you feel a little bit better. The next question is, why have I started feeling suspicious when I don't notice sensations in my body and terrified when I do? How can I change this? Okay, this is actually way more common than most people think. And this is mostly the case for people who have been in a state for anxiety for quite a long time already. So basically, your nervous system has two different states. One is a state of stress and the other is a state of relaxation. And we can either be in one or in the other, but not in both at the same time. So for many people who struggle with anxiety, the state of stress has become their default state. So basically, your fight or flight response is always activated. This means that your brain is constantly looking out and scanning for danger. And this is also why probably you are very aware of everything that's going on in your body right now. And as soon as your brain notices something that doesn't feel familiar, and this could be a headache, maybe some dizziness, but also calmness, it sees this as something being wrong. So what we usually start with in these cases is to help you activate the relaxation part of your nervous system. There are some great ways of doing this, and if we add a practice like that into your daily routine, it doesn't just help you to become more used to that feeling of calmness, but you also learn how to activate this calming state whenever you need it, and you're getting back in control over your nervous system. The third question is, how can I deal with obsessive thoughts? The first thing that you need to understand is that every thought is just a thought. There's literally no difference between thinking about a potato and thinking that you're going to have a heart attack. They're literally just thoughts and they don't have any meaning. They cannot hurt you, they cannot change you, they're literally just a thought. So the best thing to do would be to just let those anxious thoughts pass by just like any other thought. But I know that in reality it is not that simple, right? Especially because the part of your brain where anxiety comes from, it doesn't see a difference between what is real and what you imagine. So simply thinking or imagining something can literally trigger anxiety. So what we want to do is we want to teach your brain that those thoughts cannot hurt you. Right now, your amygdala sees those thoughts as a danger and it turns on the alarm, which is the anxiety response. But if you would not respond to this alarm and those thoughts, at some point your brain will realize that there is no danger. Then the anxiety will slowly come down and you've just begun rewiring your brain in a way that it no longer sees those thoughts as a threat. So the next time that those obsessive thoughts are popping up in your head, first just try to notice it. Then label it as just a thought to take away some of its power. Then the most important step, stay with the discomfort without responding. And after that, you will see that the obsessive thought slowly fades away. But the more you try to get rid of a thought, the longer it will stay. And of course, also here, this works best if we first focus on regulating your nervous system and making you a little bit more resilient to the anxiety. The next question is, what is the best way to handle dizziness? I get so scared after it happens that it triggers a panic attack or it leaves me feeling exhausted all day. The good news is that in most cases that dizziness coming from anxiety is very easy to deal with, because what happens when our fight or flight mode is activated is that we start breathing faster. And this is a great way to get more oxygen into your muscles in case you need to fight or run away, right? Also known as fight or flight. But something else happens when we breathe too fast, and that's that we start over-breathing. This causes us to breathe out too much carbon dioxide, and we can get symptoms like dizziness, tingling in your hands and feet, shortness of breath, feeling that you're going to faint, and so much more. And this is also why in the movies, when you see someone having a panic attack, they're sometimes breathing into a paper bag, because this way you're breathing in the carbon dioxide again. So simply breathing less and breathing slower helps in most cases. And something else you can do is to make sure that you breathe through your nose throughout the day. Because if you're someone who breathes through your mouth, then it could very well be that you're in a chronic state of stress simply because you're over-breathing all day long. Then we have the last two questions, which are very similar, which is, how do I regain confidence in doing things that didn't scare me before I developed anxiety? And how can I restore my mind to how it was before anxiety instead of being chronically disturbed by it? In most people, anxiety comes down to two things. The first one is a dysregulated nervous system, which means that it's very hard for you to calm down. And in many cases, it also means that your body can get stuck in the anxiety mode. And the second thing is that your amygdala, which is the part of your brain that triggers anxiety, is too sensitive. And this means that it activates the anxiety response even if there's no need for it. So if you want to go back to feeling how we felt before the anxiety took over, so to say, then we have to focus on those two things. Like I said earlier, after getting a better understanding of how your anxiety works, the first thing we need to do is to get you some tools to help you regulate your nervous system again and make it easier for you to relax when you're stressed. And there are a lot of great ways of doing this, but this all depends on your personal situation. In some cases we use certain nutrients, for example magnesium glycinate, which can help to balance your nervous system a little bit more. But there are also ways of balancing your cortisol levels, tools to turn on your relaxation mode, or even tools to make you more resilient to stress. But here's the best part. We can actually stack multiple of those tools together. So we would have one tool to prevent panic attacks, for example, one tool that reduces overthinking, one to help you to quickly calm down, to end morning anxiety. And in many cases, this already reduces anxiety so much that most people could simply live a normal life again from there on. But we want to go a step further, because these tools don't really help with the issue of the overactive amygdala. Even if you already feel so much better, your amygdala will still see danger everywhere. This could be simply feeling a sensation in your body, or a thought in your head, or even a certain location. So we literally have to teach your brain that what it sees as a threat isn't actually dangerous. And we do this with something called exposure therapy. This is where we gradually start doing the things that trigger your anxiety, often starting small and doing something that's not too overwhelming, and then slowly building our way up. If you do this correctly, your brain will realize that it's just a false alarm, and then the anxiety will not be triggered anymore. And then we have the last question for today. What are the essential diet components for reducing anxiety and stress? So diet has a huge influence on our mental health. 90% of your serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter that makes you feel calm and happy, is produced not in your brain but in your gut. And many people I've worked with have had great results simply by making some small changes in their diet. And which diet works for you depends a lot on your personal situation, but the easiest way to feel better is to just stop eating processed foods. If you would start eating real foods that don't come from a factory, I can guarantee you that both your mental and physical health will improve and everything just feels better. You'll get less inflammation, which means less pain, less anxiety, but also more energy, better mental clarity, and basically your whole life will improve from that. Besides that, I like to focus on nutrient-dense foods. So eggs are a great example. They have lots of B vitamins, lots of minerals, and they're very beneficial for mental health. But also high-quality meat, fatty fish, and fruits will give you many of the vitamins and minerals that your nervous system needs to function normally. And if you want to supplement, then also check out my ebook. You can download it for free. And here I describe 5 nutrients, which are magnesium glycinate, vitamin D3, vitamin B1, zinc, and omega-3, and how they help with different aspects of the anxiety and different symptoms. And lastly, I would also recommend to avoid a few things like any processed sugars, seed oils and vegetable oils, caffeine and alcohol, because all of those things can make the anxiety way worse. So I hope this answered your questions for this week. If you have any questions for the next Q&A, just let me know in the comments and I will answer them next week.